Just say those words and we'll take our birds down to.
Welcome, everyone. It is so good to see everyone's faces. Laurel, David, Melanie, Tracy, Judith, Eileen, Rianne, Caitlin, Kitty, David, Kat, Gabby. Oh my gosh, I see Linda here. Will, Andrea. This is beautiful. And thank you all for your patience. I have been on a a deep internal bardo. I'm now 5 months pregnant and first trimester. Yeah. For the women who've had children, I understand now. I was like, people like morning sickness. It's not morning sickness. It's like morning, midday, afternoon, evening, midnight sickness. But I'm really excited to be back and to be able to kick off the first of this free series, the Lucid Life interview series that we started last year. I'll also be doing some free lucid dreaming programs. We're going to try some dream circles. We're going to have some fun in the next 6 months, just with really bringing this community back together and really picking up and continuing our practices together. And I'm really excited because, I managed to pull this together last minute with a teacher I have been hoping to bring to you guys for ages. Because as you know, listen, anything lucid dreaming, I got you. I really like it's in my blood, it's in my experience. But the minute we start peeling off into this other kind of transitionary dimension into astral projection, out of body experiences, or as we talk about, in the kind of Andrew Holochek's model of the 9 stages, the seventh stage of dream yoga, I always say, listen, you need to talk to an expert. And Jade Shaw is one of the people I always recommend working with, training with, because she has this incredible synthesis of both the traditional teachings. She's really grounded her training in Buddhism. She lived in a Buddhist center for many, many years. That's the origin of her practice too. But she synthesized it with, all of her expertise in psychology too. She went to an MSc in transpersonal psychology, specifically on these practices, and she's got that amazing kind of left brain, right brain balance where she's been involved in the research of it. She's consulted on that big Netflix show. I don't know if you saw it, Behind Her Eyes. Pretty freaky. And I always love Jade always says, listen, like she consulted on like the realistic aspects of that, not the unrealistic aspects. But like they brought her in to be like, we want to do this well. She's been a teacher on Mind Valley, and she's, also trained as part of it. I don't know if you guys know the whole like CIA Stargate program, right? The idea that the CIA actually trained the operatives to do these kind of out of body projections with the Monroe Institute. She's done all of those trainings and collaborated with those institutes. So one of the things I really respect about her as a teacher is her capacity to hold the context of like where these teachings have come from cross-culturally, but then like really teach them in a practical, grounded way. As we all know, especially with these esoteric practices, having that kind of guidance is invaluable. And her integrity as a human being. That's the other thing, right? So I'm excited. We'll bring her up in a moment, and we're going to have an exploration around, what is OBE? What is astral projection? How does it overlap with lucid dreaming? How do we know? How do we access it? All the questions I have not been able to answer for you for years. So I'm so excited. But before we dive in with Jade, let's just take 2 minutes just to cohere together, just to land in the space. Just 2 minutes to just close down the eyes, to remember that we are more than just a brain on a stick, and to breathe into our bodies, and to gently follow that breath down to the ground below. Just noticing where your body makes contact with the seat, with the floor. And just noticing that sensation of stability. With each breath, allowing the body to soften into the good ground below. Recognizing in that sensation of stability, safety, connected to the safe, stable ground below. Able to release any tension, any holding, any clenching of the jaw, tightening in the belly. Just allowing yourself to release that into the safe, stable ground. Safety and stability, allowing us to be fully present. And then on the next inhale, breathing that up into the body, breathing up a sense of safety and stability into the legs, the pelvis, the heart, the throat, the head. This sense of safe, stable ground, both within and without. Just allowing with every breath up, spine to lift a little, rooting down and sprouting up like a great tree of wisdom. And just noticing how at the very center of your being in your heart, notice how these qualities mix and mingle. Humility and sovereignty. Groundedness and inspiration. Heart like a sun, shining warm, touching every sensation, sound, and thought in your experience. As we sit here as great trees with shining hearts, knowing that our roots are interconnected, we sit in community, we sit in solidarity, grateful for the opportunity to learn, to grow, to share together. May what we learn here today provide goodness to ourselves and to ripple out to all of those we love and beyond into the world. Just taking one last deep breath in. And just gently opening the eyes. All right. Let's fly. Let's fly away. So I'm going to bring up Jade Shaw, dear friend, and very, very, very respected, treasured teacher of these practices. Jade, thank you so much for coming and joining us in this in this adventure today.
Thank you for having me. I feel honored that it's one of the first sessions of the year as well. So, yeah, I hope I can come here and give you some inspiration, some useful stuff to prepare you for the year ahead and also influence your dreams.
Yeah, and it's cool. Like one of the things I appreciate, Jade, about your teachings as well is that you really focus on helping people use these practices in order to develop and grow as beings, and in order for us to sort of transform the world. So it's not just like, let's access a bunch of altered states for our own personal entertainment, but really aligning that with, I think, what everybody here cares about. Every single one of you I've spoken to, I know, cares deeply about using these practices, not just for your own joy and healing, but to ripple out. I know, Jade, that's important to you. But first, let's just start at the most important basics, which is, can you just give us a 101 on what is an out-of-body experience? What's astral projection? Are they the same thing? Can you just get us on the same page here?
Yeah, sure. Basically, so it depends what lens we look through at out of body experiences. So, how do we make sense of them through whatever modality we're looking at? So, neuroscience, psychology, different cultural traditions. So, if we look at Western psychology, the technical definition, which is more of a phenomenological one. So, how does it feel when we look at how when people have these out of body experiences? What are they reporting? And basically, it is the sensation of feeling of floating out of or leaving your physical body and entering what appears to be another state of reality, state of existence, different dimension. Whether or not that is true, who really knows? But a lot of different spiritual traditions, almost all of them have a practice for this in some way that is done very differently in different cultures. But most of these would generally say it is the soul or spirit or consciousness in some shape or form leaving the body and entering the imaginal realms, the bardo states, the greater collective dimensions around us, depending on how you want to make sense of it, in a nutshell. and to know whether you're having one is the feeling of sense of leaving the body. And one of the most reported common phrases that most out-of-body experiencers say is, it felt realer than real, with this sensation of that they are not more than their physical body. Hence the reducing of death that they get when they then come back for most people. So if you've ever heard of a near-death experience, that is an out-of-body experience. It's what we call a forced out-of-body experience, where the mind or the brain is compromised to some degree, and then this creates a shift in the psyche which goes, I need to get out of here, I need to leave for a moment or two, and then it comes out. So that is the forced out-of-body experience, which is a near-death experience, because there are 3 types. This is the forced, then there's spontaneous, which kind of happens at random, just because we enter the right conditions. So if you've ever felt yourself on the massage table, or maybe you are on the edge of sleep, you're getting deep relaxed and you start to feel a bit floaty, you could almost potentially have an out-of-body experience. This is entering the right conditions at random. And you get this when people have psychedelics, it gets them super relaxed, and they might springboard and suddenly find them out of body. Or even pregnant women on the operating table. Not on the operating table, I'm mixing 2 things. Pregnant women, and also if you're having an operation. So 2 different things there. You might find yourself going beyond the body due to the psyche going, what the heck? So this is the sensation of kind of leaving the body.
And I'm curious because in this context, out-of-body experience, which sounds like it sounds like an awesome way of having a descriptive name for something. It sounds like it's a delamination of the conscious experience from the physical body. It sounds like obviously this can happen while we're wide awake. So like you're saying, something happens to us, or perhaps we're in an operating situation or on delivery, like I said. But obviously for everyone here, we're all real dream workers. And I'm curious about like the fact that there seems to be a way to enter this too from the dream world. Is it the same mechanism? Is it just because our consciousnesses are already kind of out of the body, or is it a different thing? Is that astral projection? This is out of body. Is there a difference?
I'm glad you said that, because you reminded me of the 3rd one, which I didn't say. So perfect intuition there. So the 3rd one is self-initiated, which is where we try to self-induce or bring about these experiences for some cultural traditions would say enlightenment, self-actualization. In more slightly shamanic ones, it would be meeting dead loved ones, connecting with ancestors, spirit guides. So similar to a shamanic journey, but not the same. In regards of dreaming and astral projection, in a very simple, brief way, astral projection is the esoteric term for a self-induced out-of-body experiences. So it is just another way of saying out-of-body experience, but within the esoteric traditions who believe that there is this hierarchical dimension of existence beyond the body that we enter, such as the astral planes, etheric planes. It goes into kind of this a dogmatic hierarchy of dimensions.
Right, because it's very organized that. And I'm actually curious then, before we go into a little bit more detail around the differences, especially between this lucid dreaming, because everyone here who's been practicing the conscious entering into dreams, the using of dreams in a really intentional, lucid way, is curious about this. But I had one of the questions that I think I've always kind of circulated on when it comes to astral projection. And I think astral projection specifically, because I think with out-of-body experiences, I often think about people being, like maybe ending up out of their bodies, but not necessarily being on this like intentional spiritual journey. But I'm like, where do we end up? I'm like, what is this? Like, where are we ending up? I guess I feel like it's such I've had a few personal experiences of this, not enough to really map it or feel it. And everyone's journeys are different. I hear some people saying that they're able to move into like the Akashic records and access different dimensions, or to go to literal different planes, or visit different alien species, or just walk around the actual house that they're in. So can you just speak a little bit to like, where are we going?
Thank you for asking the age-old ancient question that every culture and philosophy has been trying to discover the answer to since the dawn of time, which is, no one truly knows where we're entering. Are we entering into dark matter, a spirit realm, an expanding state of consciousness with different collective realms? No one truly knows. I don't teach. I sit on the fence and don't teach from a specific belief system point of view. In a sense, I say it's this or that. And that's why my approach to how we teach this is a little bit different to other teachers as well, because I don't say we're definitely going here or this is what it is, because no one truly knows. But there seems to be some evidence that people can and have got evidence from objective out-of-body experiences where we appear to go out into this reality, into our everyday world here and now, and be able to prove something beyond drawing on our imagination and beyond drawing on our memories, which is what a lot of the skeptics would say. Oh, well, you're just making something up and remembering. There are some, like Graham Nichols, for example, which is an extraordinary tale, and it's also going in my book. His is one of the most verified experiences, which on paper, scientifically, is almost irrefutable. In a nutshell, he was doing some research. 5 people around him in a circle went into an altered state, one specifically for out-of-body experiences, the mind-awake, body-asleep state, was suddenly found himself being taken to London, found himself dropped on the corner of Moore Street and another street whose name escapes me. Across the side was the Polo restaurant, and just in front of him, several yards ahead, was the Admiral's pub. From the Admiral's pub, there was this huge explosion and came out, everything went into slow motion. He was standing there and he felt the wave of the emotions of the people hit him, and that sent him back into his body. I've left some details out for sake of time, but when he came back, he said, I feel like I've had a prophetic out-of-body experience. It's going to be a bomb outside the Admiral pub, and I feel like it's going to be in a few days. It's very soon, this week, he said. So the 5 people all wrote this down, and they were all researchers. And then 5 days later, the Soho nail bombing happened, exactly where he said, outside the Admiral pub. You can go there today, and there's a plaque showing where that is. And the researchers said, yes, we didn't pre-plan this. It isn't made up. He had this, which he saw. So there are things that we potentially can use this for. One is prophetic. It seems to be prophetic out-of-body experiences, and then others are things that seems to be greatly affecting people is the connection with the afterlife or the realms beyond the body. And as we know, in many traditions, particularly Tibetan Buddhism, it is trained for conscious dying at the point of death. So I think those 2 things are...
It sounds kind of like a choose your own adventure, doesn't it? Like the sense of being able to essentially access a non-physical state. So like, I remember once reading an amazing book kind of from a Toltec perspective around this, where they were sharing that our sense of perspective and consciousness lives in the body only by habit. And because we've centralized ourselves here over and over again, part of the shamanic training is to actually learn how to voluntarily move that perspective so it's not connected to the physical body. And this sounds similar. So being able to move the perspective out of the physical body into this non-physical state. I know, for instance, the CIA were using it to try locate enemy ships. And I think there was a successful case where one of the remote viewers really was able to locate a ship that had gone down to precision enough in the middle of the frickin' ocean that they were able to go retrieve it. So being able to access like an infinite freedom. So like, come fly with me anywhere in the world, because you're out of the body, you've got this freedom of movement. But then, like you're saying, Jade, it seems like beyond that, there's also the capacity to move interdimensionally too. So that's not, from what I've heard from your experiences and other clients' experiences, that there's this capacity to move between whatever these realms are that we can't prove or map, which is really, really interesting. And so then I'd love to bring this and connect it with lucid dreaming, because obviously lucid dreaming and astral projection have this big overlap because of the fact that, so with the Tibetan trainings, for sure, there is this encouragement that once you're in a lucid dream, right? So you're in a dream, you realize you're dreaming, lucidity comes online, cool. You can generate an energy body and move from the personal psychological space of the dream, which I think is kind of how we might describe it. Like in our dreams, we tend to be in a high definition virtual reality projection of our own personal minds. I think there's some collective stuff thrown in there too, but let's just say moving out of that space intentionally into like what you're describing here, which are these more like these shared objective realms. So this is a question. I mean, I will not be overestimating if I say about 20 something people sent me this exact question for you, Jade, which is, can you please speak to the differences between a lucid dream and astral projecting? How do I know if I'm astral projecting or having a lucid dream? Both from the context of like leaving from within the dream, but also from the context of when you're in sleep paralysis and you're going through that vibratory state and you can kind of pop into a dream, or some people are experiencing the feeling of popping into astral, but they're just not sure. So this is the $1 million question.
It is. If I had a penny for every time I got asked this question, I'd be a very, very rich lady. It's one of the most common questions. What are the differences? I've actually anticipated that this may arise. So I've got a brief, simple presentation to go through some of those points that you've just requested. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And I'm not the best technical person, so I may need 20 seconds of your patience to everyone listening and viewing while I pray to the technology gods to help us and be with us here today.
I always call the online world the digital astral realm because it feels like that. And I feel like you have to make your sacrifices to the digital astral beings too. It looks like you've done it because it was working great. I can see that. Fantastic.
Exactly. We have to make our offerings to the digital realms, digital astral realms. So is it a lucid dream? Is it not a lucid dream? So I'm slightly coming here from the angle of Tibetan Buddhism and the difference that very loosely they might say between astral projection and lucid dreaming is a lucid dream happens with the individual hallucination of our own consciousness, our own psychology. Astral projection, aka a self-initiated out-of-body experiences, may happen within this wider collective hallucination, wider realities beyond our own mind. The question is, where is the picket fence of our own mind and this external reality? Assuming there is an external reality, of course, which they may not be. Where is that fence? Where is that line? And this is where you sometimes hear people talk about the 1% of when you're in a lucid dream, almost everything is you, but then occasionally we might have these other aspects that seem to be outside of ourselves. So I like to use this metaphor, which Charlie Morley, the lucid dream teacher, uses, but he stole it off me, by the way, and that is, it is true, a lucid dream is like being in the computer of our own mind. So we have access to the hard drive, the files, and the pictures, which are memory, trauma, and conscious mind. Inside an out-of-body experience, perhaps we have access to external information, which is why we can verify experiences, visit different locations, and even have contact with other people or beings and entities, if there are any that actually exist. So there could be a cable connecting the internet to the laptop of our own mind. And that's when occasionally we might have something in our dream that feels like it's beyond, such as a visitation from a dead relative, visitation dreams, or that we could then springboard from a lucid dream using that cable to go into the wider reality. So you can actually shift from a lucid dream into an out-of-body experience and not just do it from the waking state. And if you're already lucid dreamers, and if you're already dreamers anyway, even if you've never had a lucid dream before, you're already 80% there because of all of the work that you're currently doing, which helps with out-of-body experiences. So some of the neurological differences, in a nutshell, is both occur in non-ordinary states of consciousness, which is often why they're mixed up, right? But both are transpersonal experiences. We do go beyond the sense of self and appear somewhere other beyond. And so lucid dreaming only happens in REM dream state and some deep dream states. And the same areas associated with self-assessment and self-perception, they physically switch on. It's actually a hybrid state of being conscious and unconscious at the same time, which is freaking cool. In an out-of-body experience, we can have it in multiple brain states. So for example, they can happen wide awake. We don't have to be asleep. And they usually occur because the tempoparietal junction, in the brain, which is kind of like the crossroads of our sense of self, where all the parts of our integrated reality come together, our sensory perception is disrupted somehow. When that's disrupted, we can't find where our sense of self is, where we perceive ourselves to be. And so when that is disrupted, you then have an out-of-body experience because our psyche goes, what the heck? I don't know where I am. So I might create a different reality around me based on my memory and imagination, which is what science says. And then cultural traditions would say, well, that is just the switch to click your external perception of the world off and to go inwards, to go outwards to different realms of reality. There has been some studies that are on the vibrational state, which means just before you leave the body, you might feel huge vibrations, sensory, kind of a feeling of energy flowing. You might be moving, you might go big, small, you might see lots of colors. So this isn't the hypnagogic state, it is different, but you often pass through this transitory precursor state just before you have that moment of leaving the body. And they've done studies on this, and it says they go into gamma brain waves, which is interesting because some of the highest meditating monks in the world have gone into gamma brainwave states at when they're having kind of enlightenment experiences. So this is what most people want to know is, okay, if I'm in an altered state or a dream, or I feel like I'm going beyond the body, what is the difference? How do I actually know? So the first is, and I'm going to say a quote here from Nancy Travalato. She specializes from the Spiritist tradition, and she's the CEO of the International Academy of Consciousness. And she says it's a bit like having an orgasm. You know whether you're having one or not. So if you're thinking, am I out of body? Am I not out of body? I don't know. Probably the likelihood is that you're not, unless you've had very similar altered state experiences where you've become acclimatized to that feeling of going beyond or being disconnected from your body. So in a nutshell, I'm just going to bullet point them quickly. So first is the vibrational state. Most people in a lucid dream don't have this at all. They might sometimes feel like the dream vibrates, but usually they don't have this sense of vibration and then this sense of separation. The body is different. So when you have an out-of-body experience, you actually usually have no body. You are either this light, malleable, ghost-like, sometimes it's ghost-like, sometimes it's like light, sometimes it's holographic, sometimes it is like you are energy. One of the biggest ones I say I was like the Predator in the 80s movie Predator, where he goes into stealth mode, kind of bit like the Invisible Man. So sometimes I'm like that. Other times I'm just a floating point of perception with no shape or form. So this is the moving awareness that Mia was kind of insinuating early on. So usually you don't have any body, whereas in a lucid dream, most of the time, often, your body is like your normal body. It can be changed. You could say, I get rid of my body and I turn into a bird. And then you can do that. But most of the time, your body is more or less the same. And then the sex that you can have. So lucid dream sex, again, because you have a body, it's more or less the same, dependent on if, you can be flying in the sky and have sex in the sky, or, so there are those kind of differences, but usually the feeling's the same. And in out-of-body experiences, people have had these merging together of what feels like energies or souls. So rather than a physical act of sex, it feels more like this blissful merging of union of energy.
Can I ask about one of the phenomenological differences? I think it's kind of a more traditional one. Was I was told things like you can see detail, like how in a lucid dream we use the detail of hands that shift and change as a way of checking, or we use text because in a dream it tends to be a little bit more difficult to have this like consistency. One of the things I was told that like if you're really out of body, there's a much greater consistency in the environment. And then I was also told that you have either you do or you don't have a shadow. Like there's like little like fun, these kind of, I think they're kind of older like Tibetan Buddhist things. I'm wondering if you know any of those. Is any of that true?
Thanks, Mia. It literally takes us into the next point. So you're right, the environment seems more stable. So for example, in a lucid dream, you could call out, and I used to do this all the time when I wanted a little puppy. I could call out, there's a puppy behind me now. So I always do a lock with a command in a lucid dream. So I do a bump at the end to kind of lock the command, and then a puppy would appear behind me. Or I might say beach behind me now, and then clap, and then I would turn reality into a beach, because we all want to go to the beach, I assume, in some way. Whereas the call and response doesn't work in an out-of-body experience, and you can't seem to change the environment because it appears to be not interlinked with your own mind. Hence, the idea that we are in these other spaces and places. And with that, you get a lot of people feeling like they are not supposed to be somewhere when they are out of body, in the sense that they might feel that they are entering a building and they're watching what's happening there, like the CIA going beyond and seeing where the enemy spaces were. So the call and response doesn't tend to work. Intention works, but the call and response out loud mostly doesn't. There has been some reports in some cases that it has, but generally the answer would be no. In time estimation, in an OBE, usually time goes out the window. This is a bit similar to lucid dreaming, but we track it sequentially. So in order to remember, a recall technique I teach is sequential tracking. So I come out of my body, I'm in my room, I go out the window, I go up into the sky, I cross into a dimension, I meet a dead loved one. So we're tracking it by the events that happen, not how time feels, because time can feel forever in some of these states. And then the space and entrance. So often you're in a bird's eye view. Now that only really accounts if you are entering objective everyday reality. If you're entering a different, more abstract realm or dimension, you might not have a bird's eye view, but for most people, they feel like they're floating out of their body. They might see their body. They're up above. They're usually flying or they're up above. Lucid dream, most people tend to be, you start walking somewhere, or you're in a dream, you're walking around. You're not usually already in the sky. Of course, you can have that in some cases. And then the communication, this is similar to lucid dreaming, but more common in out-of-body experiences, that when you connect with somebody or something, you feel like it's more telepathic. So there's this exchange of knowing through the intention and of what your thoughts are in the moment, rather than speaking out loud. And then the return, people often feel crash landings, feeling like they've just dropped into their body, which can be mistaken from hypnic jerks on the edge of sleep. People can kind of jerk and feel like they've crashed, but often from an OBE, they feel like they slam back into their body. With practice, you stop doing that. That's more with beginners. And then obviously we've spoke about verifying the experiences. And so I'm going to bullet point these. There are some similarities. Intention works, which is great. Level of control, clarity, and longevity depends on the skill of the experiencer, usually. Gaining insights and realizations, both the most amazing, powerful modalities, right? And then having mystical and numinous experiences of interconnectedness and emotional impact. So there are some similarities in terms of feelings. But I kind of like to see it as they're both sports. So if aliens came down and they look at these two things, they might see, oh, they're a bit like sports. They both contain a court and a pit, which is consciousness. They both require getting a ball into a net. I need to get lucid, or I need to go beyond the body. And they both involve two teams. So it's an altered state, and then they can turn into a transpersonal experience. But in actual fact, phenomenologically, they are different rooms with different games and different dynamics. So both can also be used from deep meditation, and we can springboard. Now, I've got 3 techniques, an easy, intermediate, and advanced one of how to shift from a dream into astral projection. I'm going to tell you the easiest one because the other 2 require some level of ability. And so the first one, you can try this, is out of body now. So you get lucid, or you're in a vivid dream. You can actually use this to get lucid. And you open yourself in a symbolic open gesture to receiving, and you say out of body now 3 times. But you don't just go out of body now, out of body now, out of body. Really commit to that intention, opening the arms, out of body now, out of body now, out of body now. And we use out of body because of what that signifies to the psyche. Whether we are going out of body, no one knows, but we signify that as a trigger for the out of body experience. Then just see what happens. For some people, there are some symptoms and signs, which I'm going to show you in a minute, but you might still be stood there and nothing might happen. So in which case, if you want to, I call this doubling up. I'm a big fan of doubling up techniques, mainly for the modern practitioner because our attention drifts too easily. So go out of body now. If nothing happens, you can go as high as you can. So intentionally fly as high as you can. If you can't fly in lucid dreams or your dreams, which I couldn't for many years, so I've got an alternative for this. But so placing the hands down or up and flying high as high as you can, and then still saying out of body now, out of body now, out of body now, flying really high. If you struggle to fly, you can go down through the ground. So you can create a circle in the floor. So you can create a circle in the floor, on a wall, or in space. So just in the air itself. And you can create this portal, which is a symbolic doorway. We're getting into slightly more esoteric stuff now, just side note. And you can say, when I step through this portal, I will leave my body, or I will go beyond my body. You can make these words your own as a command, but I would use this as a backup if the first one doesn't work. But then also it's to inquire if it doesn't work, maybe there is something there for you to see or be shown. I'm intuiting what that is in the moment and reflecting on it, rather than forcing, I must try to go beyond my body if you've tried twice and your psyche or the dream is keeping you in a certain space. So I'll whip through the signs and then we'll get back to the conversation because some of these are really juicy things to talk about. So what some lucid dreamers have reported and dreamers they've felt they've been moved to a different location. So I want to say here, I've been moved out of my body to a different location from the dream, but also I've just been moved to another part of the dream. And I know I'm in the dream. And I'm like, oh, well, I didn't go out of body, but I've been moved to somewhere else in the dream. So just being aware of that. Feelings of energy, vibrations. Sometimes the whole dream can start going, and it can collapse. And if you've heard of the void, maybe Mia's mentioned it before, another teacher, the void behind the dream state, where there are no projections, it's almost this black, intangible space of potentiality. You can do the command there. So then you can use the void as a springboard, an interconnective bridge to out-of-body dimensions and other realms. The dream staying changing, the dream scene not staying solid anymore, and then transitory portals and wormholes. Many people have reported feeling they've been sucked out of their body through a wormhole or a portal of some kind, which I think is pretty cool. It's like being on a roller coaster. At least that's been my experience. So I'll stop sharing there in case anything has come
So many
up.
questions. So I guess the first one is, because I know this stuff is so nuanced, right? And it becomes a really interesting task for any guide of these altered states when we try to put into language these very nuanced experiences of mind. Cool thing is my community are some of the smartest, most nuanced people you'll talk to. So this will be fun. When you make that shift, so let's talk about leaving from a lucid dream and being like, okay, cool, I'm lucid. I want to do astral projection out. I've had the same experience where like I've done that and then I feel something. So sometimes like I'll make a door, I'll move through it, I'll feel like a vibratory sensation and I end up somewhere different. But I'll be honest, like I don't know for sure. I'm like, I don't know. Like I was like, did through the power of expectation, did I create this experience of vibration and now I'm out in another place? I find it really difficult to know. So maybe is there like, what would be the first thing you do once you've kind of had the experience of like, I've been moved somewhere or there was a sense of shift? What's the first thing you would do to just check how, like, have I moved out of the body?
Yes, great question. So, two things here. One is if you make a portal or a door and you just walk through it without the intention of leaving the body, it might just take it. Walking through a door or portal doesn't instantaneously mean you're going to be out of body. It's a tool to leave the body. So if I were to walk through a portal in my dream, it would just take me to another area in the dream.
Sure.
Probably. So you have to have that, I intend to go out of body. When I cross this threshold, that's where I'm going to go. Whether you do or you don't is another question, but that intention needs to be there for that. Then the second thing is most people the only way, I shouldn't say the only way currently we can seem to do this scientifically is by verifying something. So my Tibetan Buddhist teacher, Akon Rinpoche, he was like, yes, astral projection is good. And then Lam Yeshe was like, when you go out, oh no, it was Akon Rinpoche, not Lam Yeshe. He said, try to verify something, like a door number, but somewhere you haven't been before and where you haven't seen it like on TV. It's not something you've read in a book. Like people go, oh, I went to the Akashic Records, but you've read about the Akashic Records. So something which you can then later verify, and it might end up being something obscure. You might decide with a friend to go visit a friend and see what they're doing in that moment of time. You might decide to have an experiment where somebody puts an item on top of their wardrobe and you go see that item. What I would say is don't use words or numbers because it's better to use a symbol. Because let's say I go out of body and I go to my friend's wardrobe and they've placed a teddy on top. Let's say it's a purple teddy in a top hat because the item needs to be specific. If it's too vague, we could have easily guessed a teddy in a bedroom, right? So it needs to be very specific. A purple teddy with a top hat, let's say his name written on is Peter. And then you can tap into, when you return with that information, you might have seen the teddy literally as it is. You might have tapped into that person's personal connection with the teddy. Let's say it's related to a childhood trauma, and then you come back and you start talking about a childhood trauma, which is what you saw, which is connected to the emotional state of that person. So sometimes you can verify something in a very literal way, and we see it. And sometimes you can be tapping into something on a more transpersonal plane, but then you come back and you can say, is this item connected to something that happened in your childhood?
So seeing it kind of like a almost like there might be, I sometimes like to think of it as overlays, right? Like let's say we have like material physical reality where we're all like stomping around in our flesh suits and we've got our brick and our mortar and our teddies made of cotton, right? Like, and there's like that level of like the literality, which I know there have been really interesting anecdotal studies, evidence of astral projectors being able to verify that. Or, like you said, with operations, like the amazing stories of people leaving their bodies and watching with full accuracy and being able to report on their operation, even though they were fully, neurologically unconscious. But here, what you're saying, which I think is interesting, is that there may be kind of like parallel overlays where there are almost like the astral could be like the emotional symbolic overlay. So even though you go into the physical position where the teddy bear is, the information you're retrieving is like the symbolically anchored information that that teddy contains, which is really interesting. Which leads me to my next question is like you say, okay, cool, like just go check this. How? Like if I'm like I pop out of a portal and I'm like, okay, like when I've done this before, I've ended up in kind of a not recognizable space. I haven't ended up, for instance, in my bedroom. Like when I've left my body during sleep paralysis before I go into a dream, I've rolled out of my body and I'm in my bedroom. But when I've left from a dream, I'm often in like a miscellaneous space. Can you speak to us about using intention to move to locations or to do things that we want to do in the astral realm?
Exactly. Great question. And so I do something called, this is similar to creating a dream plan. Where you decide to do something in the lucid dream or within dream work. And so you would have an intention and a motivation. So what do you want to do, but why do you want to do it? And there's numerous different incubation exercise that I teach you in my method, which we use at my school and we've just done in science, in a study. But an easy one for you guys, because I know your guys are above average in some of this stuff. So I write usually in the journal, I go beyond my body too, for the purpose of for the benefit of, so you have this third extra layer, which is, bodhicitta in Buddhism, where you're not doing this solely for yourself, but for the greater collective. So writing a projection plan, but really tapping into why is this so meaningful and motivating to me? The reason why this is a secret that's going to make it happen is if you just go, I want to leave my body and go check on my ex-boyfriend, the universe or your psyche isn't going to get on board for you to go check and see what they're doing, right? It's not a really pure motivation. And also it's, the second thing is you might go, oh, well, I want to find my life purpose. I want to connect to and heal this. Also great. But what is underneath that, that is really, you can tap into, that would change your life if it would happen, and also would help others. And you might not know exactly what that is, but you might know what it's themed around. When we tap into that heartfelt, but a little bit scary, a little bit risky, but really heartfelt intention and motivation, usually when you come out of your body after doing the incubation practices, you will enter into that reality of where you wanted to go, or something related to it. So say you wanted to meet your dead grandma, you might not actually meet them. You might come out in your bedroom, and she might be stood there waiting for you because of that intention. Or you might come out into, let's say, a bardo state or plane of existence where she is, and then you enter that state. Or you might not get to meet her, but you're taken to somewhere where you need to heal some ancestral trauma in order to meet your dead grandma. So lots of different potentialities could come about depending on your intention and motivation. Side note here, and then it's kind of letting it go and not being too attached to what that looks like. Thinking, oh, well, I expected to go to this bardo state, and instead I've been taken and now I'm at this weird pub in the 18th century. Why am I at this weird pub? There might be a connection there. I often find there's 80% of the time, there's usually a reason why you're taken somewhere random. 20% we can get hijacked and just end up somewhere really random. But 80% of time, there's often a reason.
I have a really good $1 million question for you now then. Yeah, like with this, I'm like, okay, because this is where, I mean, my poor little daytime brain breaks over this stuff. It goes, but one of the things that I'm so curious to understand from your experience, from all of the many hundreds of people you've worked with, the trainings you've done, the programs you've run, I mean, your experience with this, if we're leaving our, like, let's say the traditionally personal psychological space of our dream, or let's say you're wide awake, you're leaving your ordinary state of consciousness, and you're stepping into what seems like more like collective space, yet there seems to be this something that's able to understand and interpret our intention. There's still some very interesting relationship between, like you're saying, like the quality and the strength of your intention, the intelligence of whatever that is, that's not just the personal collective energy, in responding to that. A dream I can make sense of, right? A dream I go, oh yeah, okay, if I step into my lucid dream, I'm stepping into my own mind, my own unconscious, which is always with me. It's responding to me. It knows my deepest fears, my deepest desires. So it makes sense to me that if I set an intention, it's like right on point to respond to me and give me what I need, if not what I want. How do you reconcile that the same thing seems to happen when we step into these greater collective spaces? And I know you can't answer it from like here's 3 studies, but like your own intuitive sense of like how that's possible and what's happening.
This comes down to duality or non-duality, and is effectively the realities that we step into, non-dual or dual. So I'm going to come down to the facts that we know in neuroscience right now, which is amazing, but also scary. So Anil Seth, which is one of the most revered consciousness researchers in the world and neuroscientist, and he's just won an award for a paper that he's just written, actually, says, we live in a consensus shared hallucination. So we expect our brains interpret reality, and we see what we expect, and our brain predicts things based on what we already know. Knowing that about ordinary reality and the way consciousness works from a scientific point of view, assuming that when we go beyond the body, we are stepping into other realities that are dualistic, not a part of ourselves, we're taking our psyche, our consciousness with us. So we are stepping into that other reality, and we're taking it with us. And assuming that it could be entangled with reality, and I'm getting more into the esoteric side here, and that is the belief to some degree our consciousness is entangled with reality. If we can have some that are more non-dualistic, then the idea would be, and we find this, that you can enter certain dimensional planes and realms based on, and I sometimes don't like using the word frequency because it feels too woo-woo, but I'll give a metaphor here. If our consciousness is like a disco ball and there are lights shining out from everywhere and it's turning, and all of these different lights are part of our own juicy consciousness, all our messiness and all our wonderful parts, and we then go out of body and our consciousness is entangled with reality, it seems like you can enter this kind of this rainbow of dimensional planes that are all connected to our consciousness in some way. And that's what we have access to. Now, I said to Anil Seth, right, because I said to him, what about the experiences we have that go completely against our inner core belief system, that go against our predictions, that go against our expectations? And then we see that. So someone who's maybe believes in God might have an experience that God doesn't exist. Or maybe someone who's very atheist then has an experience of God. Or something that they don't believe in, that, oh, I met a spirit, and they don't believe in consciousness can even leave the body. How does that work? And he avoided the question. He redirected it and he didn't answer, and I thought, ha, I got you there. But the reason why I'm sharing this is because many of the esoteric traditions say that our consciousness is entangled with reality. Every day our consciousness is entangled with reality. To what degree is it? And how can we then bridge and go beyond the dimensions of reality we have access to from our own mind, which is a bit, I call it like the disco ball, or a light coming through a prism and that's splaying out. And Monroe, who is, if you haven't heard, guys, the Monroe Institute, Robert Monroe is one of the most famous places for astral projection, and that's where the American military, the CEI, went and trained. They call these the belief systems. So these are the belief systems, and then you can go beyond that into other enlightenment planes, non-dual planes. Last thing is also, that's just using intention. There are various acts you can do once you're out of body to get somewhere as well. So there are extra things you can do whilst you're out of body to try and get to where you need to go, in a sense.
That's super cool. Yeah. And it's interesting because I know with, knowing a little bit about your different trainings and the levels you do, thank you for putting, and this is like, I know we're doing like a 101 here. For those of you who are like, I can see some people here already have some experience with astral projection or like are really getting into this. Quickly, I will talk about it towards the end, but I just want to note that Jade's, like the program she's really running right now is this amazing 12-week program she does called Beyond. It's not just her. She brings in different teachers from different traditions around this who speak to astral projection and training in a more kind of like deliberate, advanced way. So I'll speak a bit more about the end, but if you've ever wanted to actually train in this, which is like, who does not want to train in this? I would really recommend checking that out. I'll make sure. I've also passed on I believe so much in Jade's work. I don't take any commission from her stuff. I said, take whatever you'd give me and give it to my people. So we have a 21% discount, which is huge on this, that I'm passing to you guys because I've had so many conversations with people in my community who are like, I want to learn. And I'm like, I can't teach you. So I'm like, go forth. While I'm pregnant and not teaching anything, please go forth and learn from Jade. We're going to open up to questions now. So what I would like is I'm going to pull a few of the great questions that have come through the chat. If you'd like to ask a question in person, you're welcome to use the raise hand button down the bottom. But I'm first going to pull from a question I just saw here, which I thought really will be helpful for all of us, which is that how do we use this practice to develop recognition, confidence, connect to deeper states? Essentially, like how do we use this for healing and for growth? And I'm curious about this too. Again, in a dream, I'm like, oh yeah, like I can summon the exact representation of whatever trauma I'm working with or fear or construct. But I'm like, you put me in the astral moment. I'm like, I don't know. Like, what do I like? Do I ask like, teacher, come to me? Or like, how do you begin that work?
You cut out in the last little bit there. Would you just mind repeating it? Sorry, Mia.
Sure thing, yeah. Really just asking like how do you use astral projection? Like let's say you've got it going, like you're able to get out, you know that you're out of body. How do you use that for healing, for growth, for, I mean, you talk about using obviously having a strong intention. Could you give us just a few examples of what you might do and intend?
Yes. So what we know are effects of out of body experiences without using intention. So not trying to do something, not going anywhere, but you've had an experience and then you might come back, and how that might transform your everyday life. So there are 7 things, and this is what was found from my research when I did my master's degree in transpersonal psychology, but also Dr. Marina Wheeler from the Perceptual Studies Department in Virginia has also found this along with some others, and this is a motivational catalyst. A little bit like when people come from a near-death experience, you might find that they have this motivation, they make changes in their life, so that there's a catalyst that comes with something they've learned. The psyche has given them a piece of information, insight, or experience, which then creates this vast energy of motivation to create change. Then the reduced fear of death, because of that self-identification, a feeling of knowing for sure, I am not my body, creates this reduced fear of death, which has the knock-on effect to less anxiety, feeling of increased peace, which is the third point, this sensation of feeling of inner peace. One of my case studies said after her out-of-body experiences, she felt like instead of attacking life and gripping on and trying to control everything, she could just sit back and be more content, allow it to happen, and just be. And there's also increased self-awareness. I love telling people this. You guys will know things like this already, but generally, people think, oh, it's out-of-body experiences, they're escapism, you're trying to get away from something. It is not for the faint-hearted, my friend, this practice. You get more self-awareness, so your traumas are gonna come up, things from the past, how you really feel about the world around you, your things you've suppressed, or it could even be like tapping into your most divine gifts. So you become more aware, not less, which is scientifically proven in the studies on the effects. And then some people reassess their relationships, they might leave their partner, and then others have new spiritual beliefs, or completely different ones, as we mentioned. But for the everyday, knowing that those things will happen to some degree on some spectrum, I always say to use it, once you can do it, use it frugally. Same if you would go on a deep meditation retreat or a plant medicine retreat. Don't do it all the time. Just do it as and when needed. When you feel like you need direction and guidance with a decision, some psychological healing, whatever that is, relationship breakup, healing grief are 2 very powerful ones, but any psychological healing, or spiritual practice. So like in some of the traditions in Tibetan Buddhism, if you want to explore enlightenment, non-dual states, who you truly really are would be the third thing to explore through those.
That's super
And
cool.
yeah.
And so then this actually links really well to a question Felicitas just asked, which I think might be in the back of the minds for a lot of us. They're just sharing that. I'll read it to you. So since I had a drug-induced psychosis from psychedelics when I was 18, a part of me believes astral projection is really dangerous. I regularly do lucid dreaming, I'm trained in it, but astral projection leaving my body feels to me like the unsafest, scariest thing ever. And since I split my consciousness so much and left my body in that psychosis, you're curious around any thoughts about that. I'm stable, I have no fear of going back into psychosis, but it was just such an unusual state, I still don't understand. And since that, astral projection feels dangerous to me. And I know I've actually had a lot of clients ask me this too, which is like, if you're leaving the quote unquote safety of your own mind and going into these collective spaces, how can we do that safely? Or how do we, I guess, engage with safety around that question? I know that there's some ways this comes to the dual, non-dual thing, because I remember asking a Tibetan teacher this once. I was like, is there anything dangerous in the astral realm? And they were like, it's all you. So they went straight to the full non-dual thing of like, just like in the lucid dream, everything's you. Even outside of the lucid dream, everything's you. And I was like, that's awesome. I'm not that enlightened yet. I need more relative safety. So maybe you can speak to that.
Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to point out, whoever asked this really great question, it already tells me something about you, which you're probably transliminal. Some people are more likely to be able to astral project more than others. This is to do with our absorption rate, experience to openness, and our level of that, and also if we're transliminal. Transliminal people have what we call thin boundaries of consciousness, where the content from the unconscious can come quickly back or forward. And some people that enter psychosis can have that, but also if you've entered these altered states, whether psychosis or not, and also dreaming, shows you might have that natural capacity. So I just wanted to call out that strength in you. And then, so yeah, it comes down to whether we believe reality is dual or non-dual. Are the things existing outside of ourselves, and can they attack us? Can they grab us? So there's what I call the 3 irrational fears when we practice astral projection. So people come to me, beginners, and they go, will I die? Will I go crazy? Will I be attacked by an entity? These are the 3 irrational fears, which is all based on, I believe, in a separate reality to some degree. I sit on the fence whether or not a lot of teachers will just say, for the sake of safety, I believe everything is within you and it's just you. No one knows that for sure. Equally, is everything outside of myself, and are there other spirits and entities that can grab me? No one knows that for sure. And so by doing a advanced spiritual practice like astral projection, we have to connect to our own courage and our own innate power and approach these realms like it could be both. So this means dropping our own belief systems and actually going, do you know what? Could be both. Might be neither. Maybe there's a third category we can't even get our human minds around that it is, other than these 2 things. So in order to be safe in astral projection states, depends on our approach. So this is to do with incubation methods. So I say there's 3 laws of practice, which I'll share with you, which helps with this. 3 laws of practice if you're going to be an out-of-body experiencer. So one is you start with the body, you finish with the body. So the body is at the center, paradoxically. In order to leave it, we have to have one, right? So we have to do embodiment and integration exercise, and we thank the body, we honor the body, we're like, you're so cool, thank you for letting me be here, let's go on this adventure together. So honoring the body, and then at the end of a practice, doing embodiment techniques. And there's numerous, I have a whole system for this, there are numerous different ways. So start with the body, finish with the body, so we ground everything back down that we bring from these realms into our everyday life. The second is having a pure motivation. This is slightly from a more core spiritual sense, but if we have not a great motivation from a place of ego, that's when we might end up in places that we might feel that we don't want to be. Even I believe that it's still a positive experience because we will be learning something there and we'll get a gift. But if we have a pure motivation, it is going to, on an unconscious level, fizzle out into the experiences that we have. The third thing, and this is hard for most people, but you guys are probably already halfway there, if not there, through your dream work with Mia, is connection to yourself, your own power. So, and this is what the shamans train, this is what the Buddhists train, and by your own power, I say this is like the difference between becoming a passive astral projector and an active. A passive beginner will go, this experience is happening to me. Oh, I'm here. Oh, I don't know what to do. I've seen an entity. They're passive. To be active, you have to build your courage and inner strength, which often comes from a connection to something greater than ourselves, the divine or out of the body for a lot of people. Connecting to that inner power to know, I can make a decision. I say to people, okay, so you're with a being in a state, just leave. Why can't you leave? It doesn't occur to them in the moment to make that decision to go, oh, I'm going to choose to not be here. I'm going to choose to go. Now that's a kind of a gross simplistic response because you might try to do that and then maybe you can't. But it's connecting to that inner power, and that comes from approaching when you go out of body with love, which relates to the bodhicitta, right? Love, curiosity, and power. And so how our relationship is with love, curiosity, and power in everyday life will filter through into the astral planes. And then we'll, even just practicing to go out of body, we have a level of transformation because we're working with those things and mindfulness as well. I use that to go out. So love, curiosity, and power. And there's techniques of this. There's one called the 3-second stance that I teach, whereas if you meet an entity, you've got 3 seconds to respond before your fear system kicks in. So there's numerous different techniques. But whether you believe things are outside or inside of yourself, these keep you safe, grounded, and connected to your own power to be able to be with anything that could possibly unfold.
I love that. And it's such a healthy way to approach any altered state, whether you're a psychedelic practitioner or a lucid dreamer, because I mean, the truth is with these spaces, even with the purest motivation, sometimes the response we get as a truly benevolent response is to deal with something difficult. Like how we know, like, listen, we're all old enough and have gone through enough shit at this point that we know that, you know, the spiritual journey is not flowers and rainbows and fluffy bunnies all the time. And a lot of it is like reaching in and pulling up the mud and being with the shadow and like being willing to bring this love, curiosity, and power to the nastiest things that we don't really want to deal with. So I love that it's about this. I love how you're sharing like the re-internalization of this like power, bringing that with you makes you really, I guess, like unfuckwithable in these realms, which is super cool. I'm going to bring Mary up to ask a question. Thank you for waiting so patiently, Mary. Let me bring you up here. How you doing?
Thank you so much, Mia and Jade. It's such an honor to be here with you too. I'm so excited because I've been a natural out-of-body experience person for most of my adult life since I was 16, and I've never really had anybody to talk to about it. So I've been, I've had hundreds of them, but I usually don't leave my room. I usually just sort of float around. I get the vibrations and I get whooshed out of my body. But the question I have today, I've had something really strange happen the last few years, and even last week, the vibrations came, and a really cool thing, I happen to have my comforter up around my ear, and I can actually hear the comforter vibrating. So I know the vibrations are real because it's like this. But the moment the vibrations come and I would normally get whooshed out, what's been happening lately is when I'm in that fragile, vulnerable moment, this entity comes in and sort of globs on top of my body and just sort of, it doesn't seem particularly threatening, but a little bit annoying. Like there's this entity that just sort of waits on me. So like instead of going out, something else has been coming in. And this has happened dozens of times, and I've tried to work with him. I think it's a him. I'll say, who are you? Wait 3 seconds, nothing happens. What do you want? Nothing happens. And I've tried other things like out, go out. And usually what happens is I'll say go out, and then I'll actually wind up shaking my leg, and then that takes me out, and I wake up and it's all gone. So I just wanted to know what you think about that.
Thank you for sharing, Mary, and I'm glad that you feel like you can share your out-of-body experiences. One of the things that I love, which is why I'm into this, is so that people that have had them feel that they can share them with non-judgment or, not fear of being ridiculed or outcast. So thank you for sharing your experience. It reminds me a lot of some of the work I do in sleep paralysis as a gateway to out-of-body experiences, where we can have some of these feelings of entities sitting on the top when we're in paralysis. I love that you asked, who are you, or I can't remember the exact things that you did. So my number one go-to is...
what do you want? Yeah, and I was just going to say, too, I left town, and I had a girlfriend staying at my house she's a psychic, and I never mentioned this to her, and she called me, and she said, there was this entity, a really heavy entity that, like, indented on the bed, and I was like, oh, my God. I said, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
So there's two things that you could apply if you feel that these resonate, and feel free to ignore anything that doesn't. And maybe you already know some of this stuff already, because it seems like you're very natural out-of-body experiencer. One of the things is the 3-second stance, which sounds like you kind of entering into that, which is just to be. So be means dropping into the moment. This is a mindfulness technique. So the entity comes on, oh my God, what's happening? We might have these feelings, it's there, we're sensing it, what's going on, just to drop in. So this is just to become present, and to just drop into presence. So when we drop into presence, we see the truth of something a little more that is there, rather than through our own stories or fear or emotions. Then accept that it's there. Which is similar to what Charlie says. It doesn't mean we endorse something, but we accept it there. That means we can have a liaison with it. And then is act or ask. And you've already done all of this, and then you asked, the different questions. So you can ask questions and then act. And that's when you can choose whether, do you know what? This is not for me right now. I haven't received anything. I feel that this would be a benevolent or mutual exchange. So then you take a decision to act, which is, you can, you naturally intuited, I'm going to push it away with a command and a strong gesture, which is connecting to your own power. Or you can enter more into an engagement. But there has to be a feeling of like, I'm strong enough to be here right now, and I'm feeling good about this, that I can deal with this, which is that connecting to power. And so I would be curious to maybe two things. One is, and I get a lot of beginners to do this already in the work, which is lots of different protection exercises, but I imagine that you might know quite a lot about that already from what you've said. So protection exercises beforehand to incubate that in your mind. And then either further inquiry if it feels beneficial to you. So I sometimes, I say, tell me your name. This is getting a little bit esoteric and a little bit woo-woo. But in many different traditions, when you know something's name, you can have some sort of power over it or deeper connection when it tells you its name. And so sometimes, for example, I've said, tell me your name and why are you here? And it's then gone. One time there was this demon-looking thing which was coming towards me. I've had many of these, and it said, I am the personification of your relationship to abundance. And then that just snapped me out of it. So there was that there, but I've had other experiences where there's been no answers. There's similar, where there's been no answers. And I've gone, do you know what? I'm not getting nothing here. I don't know why it is. I'm going to leave. I'm going to bring myself out of it. I'm going to choose to send this away in some kind of gesture. And these are quite advanced techniques in like the entity class that we have, where we can approach these from both dualistic and non-dualistic ways. So doing the 3-second stance, which you're already doing naturally, and then asking, having a liaison, and then acting, choosing whether to stay or go. And then if you feel like it, further protection techniques around you with your energy. Again, we're slightly leaning into some of the more shamanic stuff to feel like that. But my devil's advocate voice, and I like to tap into the trickster archetype sometimes, especially with more intermediate students, would say, and this is also coming from a bit of a slightly more core shamanism view, is to do some journaling or dream work even on why that connection or that frequency with that particular entity might be open or there. Because in many of these traditions, they say, that there's maybe a reason why that connection or that frequency to that particular being, spirit, or whatever it is there. So I would do some maybe work around that. And my other devil's advocate, last thing, is sometimes it can just be random and it's not meaningful at all. And people don't want to hear that because they're like, well, sometimes it can just be, we've stumbled upon something, we don't know what it is, and that's okay too. So I hope this was useful in some way, but it sounds like you're a natural and you've done a lot of work in this area. I'd be curious to see if you felt confident after this experience of liaising with whatever this entity is, whether you would feel like to go beyond the body, further beyond your house.
I would. I think I've always been a little timid. I always feel comfortable floating around my room. And so I might want to work with you at some point to go beyond. So thank you so much.
No worries, Mary. Thank you for your question.
Thanks so much, Mary. And we're going to we'll do Derek and Doug. And then, because I know we're already at time. Jade, are you okay to stay for like 10 more minutes?
Yes. I am.
Amazing. So we'll bring Derek up. I think to give you a video on. So I'm just going to ask you to unmute to share.
Hello. How are you? I just had a question. I've been able to astral project and lucid dream quite naturally since I was a child. but I've had this other experience that's kind of happened to me, and it's happened 3 times in my life, and I'm kind of curious if it's OBE. But I've been out in public, and I'll be walking, and then everything in reality will like slow down to like a stop, and everything around me, and I'm still moving. Everything around me is in slow time, and I could like hear people's conversations from like great distances, and then I'll snap back in, and then it'll be back to reality, and everything will be moving in motion again. So I was kind of curious about what that experience is.
Thanks, Derek. The first thing is I'm probably not educated and experienced enough to answer this question, because it could be an array of things. I wouldn't know if what I was saying was true or right. But an element sounds like, from some of the Tibetan Buddhist point of views, there's these theories of when you drop into the present moment, you can you get heightened sensory awareness. You might hear other conversations, even sometimes the thoughts of people. So on one level, it could be that you're dropping into some innate gifts that are peeking through like the crack of reality, and then to nurture those and be able to use them in a grounded way. And if we look at through a different lens of psychology, there could be an element of, and this doesn't sound what it sounds like, but there could be an element of, I don't want to use the word dissociation, because that assumes that there's a lot of entangled stigma with that. But if we suddenly go out and we feel connected to everything, there's a very soft line between the mystic and the skills and the siddhis and the shamans and the Buddhists, and tipping into some of the slightly more unstable parts of our mind. So there could be a leaning and crossing between those two, and that's where all the embodiment stuff comes in, to hold that vibration, to hold that power. So it could be either or of those, or both together. What I would say is have a look at what's going on in 2 ways. Have a look at your dreams that night. Have a look at what's going on right now for me in this moment. So what's happening right now? What have I done in the day? What has happened before? What's going on in my head when you suddenly get that shift into this superpower? So question that, and maybe question the other thing that I just said, which I forgot what it is. So some reflecting things there. But otherwise, you'll get the Kundalini people saying something different. You'll get Western psychologists saying something different. It depends if it's benefiting you in some way and how you feel about it, and make sense of it for yourself in terms of its positive impact or usefulness.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, I've been journaling for years, so I do that every night. And yeah, I think it was, if I reflect on it, it was probably being very present and in the moment. A mixture of both of the things you kind of mentioned there. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Derek. And Doug, last but not least, how you doing? Let me bring you up here 1 second.
Thank you very much for allowing me to ask the question. It's when I was younger, in my teens, I did a lot of meditation and spent a lot of time in what retrospect were deep jhana states. And from there, I transitioned into having out-of-body experiences. And it got to the point where I couldn't lie down without leaving my body. And I noticed that sometimes I was extremely lucid and vivid, like more real than real. And other times it was gray and murkish, and I was sort of floating through reality. And after a while, I started noticing that I was drifting into realms that I didn't like, and I was bumping into entities that seemed to be following me, and it kind of was getting overwhelming. And so it took me about 3 or 4 months to learn how to stop leaving my body when I laid down. And I left with the conclusion that these murky states that I was in, places I was drifting to, had to do with my unresolved emotional stuff. And so I made a pact with myself that I would come to understand and clear my emotional system before I went back. And it's now 40 years later, and I think I've done that. And so I'm beginning to do the dream yogas again. And I just want to know what you know about the emotional realm and the astral realm and how those are connected. And also, I realized that having taken Chula Das's TMI training class on the mind illuminated, that the difference in how lucid I was and how bright everything was seems to be with my level of sati, my level of mindfulness that I was bringing. So, mindfulness and emotional stuff both seem to play a role in just how vivid and how aware and able we are to navigate those realms. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to that, particularly the emotional stuff in the astral realm.
Jade, you're muted. You gotta unmute first.
I was just saying, you've hit the nail on the head, Doug. So two of the things so I take a mindfulness approach to out-of-body experiences, and two of the things that in many different traditions they say is to work with emotions, clearing any kind of past trauma, and also any emotional stuff that may be linked to fears, shame, guilt, triggers around that kind of stuff, because you may be taking there two realms or places that then you have to deal and heal with things, which is why I say this practice is not for the faint-hearted, because you're going to find ourselves and aspects of our psyche and ourselves out there. So that is true, and that's what's great. Well, this is what I kind of lean into the most with, and that's why I say it's really good to have a projection plan and then something that you wish to heal or not through these states. So people are going to do astral projection anyway. They're not likely going to have your amazing, incredible level of patience and full commitment to explore these realms by doing the emotional stuff beforehand, which is why you now can have more controlled, powerful experiences that are sustainable, probably more helpful. And so that's why it's important, if somebody wants to practice, that they do it from this kind of place of love, curiosity, power, and work with certain things beforehand. So in Tibetan Buddhism, they train for 4 years, at least 4 years before allowed to be doing out-of-body experiences, because they say you have to have a stable mind, and bodhicitta, that you've developed that. So by you going away and doing those things is one of the reasons why you're less attracted or heading to those what are called lower realms in many of the esoteric traditions. Something that I say to do as an approach is I say take the valley view. So the valley view, instead of looking at this hierarchical system where there are higher realms, lower entities, higher entities, and there's this up-down trajectory of hierarchy, I often say if we look at it like we're standing on a hill in a valley and our consciousness is coming out into this beautiful river, and then it sometimes goes down into the forest, comes up over the hill, goes through the mountains and goes into the sky, but it's always moving forward in an evolving, flowing state that moves, and it may move up and down through different landscapes, i.e. different realms and dimensions, but there's always something to learn and a gift from those that we can have, as you've kind of seen with the awareness that, okay, these are parts of myself I need to clear in my emotional system first, and then you do that, and then you travel on and move through that river of consciousness. So this is the valley view approach when approaching these different states or realms. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that's the way I kind of approach it with the emotions. There's something called, in my school, we look at developing the psyche and the brain for building neural pathways to allow more out-of-body experiences to happen. And we look at cultivating the 5 ways of being. And the 5 ways of being covers the emotional body, it covers shadow work, it covers mindfulness, and then also absorption rates, openness to new experiences, and building courage to step into the unknown, which is why I use play a lot, because I think it's very important. We can get too serious on this practice, so it's good to build playing as well. Hope that was useful in some way,
Jade.
Doug. But
thank you,
it sounds
Doug.
like you're doing incredible work, and because of what you've done, I would, if you felt open to it, I would maybe do the projection plan in your diary. I would go out of my body to, for, why, and for what purpose. If you wanted to explore and look into something very deep and extraordinary, and only you would know what that is, but I would challenge you to do that if you would love to use the practice.
All right, I'm just going to
Thank
jump
you.
in here. Thank you so much, Jade, for this. Thanks, Doug, for the amazing question. I know that we're heading over time. Thank you all for your patience. With Jade, as you can see, we can go into endless explorations of this. I'm sorry we couldn't even get to like a tiny percentage of the questions in the chat. What I would say is that for those who are really interested in this, like if you want to go and really learn these practices and have the personal experience, and you're in the position where you can, go explore a program, I'd just love to really recommend Jade's program. She has one coming up, which is like a series of like the live 12 weeks. I'll actually just share it here. Hang on, let's see if I can. Give me a second. What's really cool is like, so this is her Beyond program, which has like 7 2-hour live classes with Jade. And she also brings in a whole bunch of different experts from different lineages, including having actual like live shamanic ceremonies and Wiccan ceremonies and group experiments and all the guided meditations, all the, the many, many years of very good pedagogy she's put towards this. So it's a really cool, full-on like synthesis program, which I just think is so awesome. I can't believe that we live in a time and era where we get to access this. And like I mentioned, I'll put it here. I also email this out. I wanted to make sure that this is as accessible as possible. So I'm passing on any cut I would get. I'm not getting any cut. You're getting the cut. You're getting the 21% off. So if you want to do the program, you just use Mia Lux. That's the code. It'll give you that discount. And I'll send out a little bit more about this. But if you want to go deeper into this path, Jade is a phenomenal guide. So I cannot recommend her enough. Jade, final last question around this, which is, if people were trained in astral projection, this was integrated in the world. Like, let's say we lived in a world where, spiritual esoteric schooling was normal. What are some of the impacts and the changes and the benefits to the world that you think this practice could bring?
This is going to sound a little grand and a little simplistic, but I truly believe this. And when you look at the effects on the world of when people have out-of-body experiences, there are ways it then impacts the world. This is actually what my book is about, that I'm writing. And I think it's a grand gesture, but peace, world peace, which sounds a little, oh yeah, world peace, whatever. But when you reduce the fear of death, that reduces our need for conformity. It reduces our need for a strong sense of belonging to identity and rigidness around that. It makes us less hateful. It allows us to get in a flow state, and we have lots of experiences of awe. And the experience of awe, which almost everyone has out of body, has social impact. And also the self-transcendence, so the transcending the self and the identification with the self. When you look at the impact, there is a ricochet out into how that then transforms into making people more self-aware in the world. And there's one last extra thing I wanted to add on with that. Oh yeah, and the increase in polyphasic perception, which is... Polyphasic perception is other ways of knowing, which is humans have this innately, naturally, but we've lost it and we've become a monophasic society, which means we only make sense through the physical world and through looking at what seems real. When we return to polyphasic diversity, there is a known impact on the climate and the world. And we know this from some shamanic traditions. And so the more polyphasic we return to, the more positive impact this is going to have on the climate, on our connection with nature, and also peace in society.
I love that. And it feels like that feels true and inspiring. I think anyone who's touched these realms, it's what we hear, right? On a Sunday, being like, let's go and let's learn this. So Jade, truly thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your contributions to the research, the space, your offerings, and for just showing up for our awesome Lucid Life community today. We will be sending this out as a replay for everyone who missed it. We actually maxed out. I forgot. I'm capped at 100 people on Zoom right now. So I have like 100 emails from people being like, I couldn't get in. My apologies. I will send the replay out. Jade, I look forward to continuing to learn from you and to hear from all of our community how this work impacts them. See y'all.
Bye. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care and see you on the other side.